probably guessed from the title of this blog post and the video that you clicked on, we have decided to update our logo for the new year, I suppose. Tim and I were thinking that as long as we're setting stuff up and opening up new Alamo Drafthouses and really expanding the brand, that it was probably time to revisit some different aspects of the brand that we'd always wanted to play with but hadn't really had the opportunity to. And one of the main things was the logo. We're not really unhappy with the logo or anything like that, but it always felt like, wow, that could be a little bit better.
Now, everything for the original logo was based on the sign. We actually bought the sign before we even had a name for the theater, and so the sign itself dictated the name of the theater. And so the way it worked is we have a buddy that does vintage neon restoration, and he had 2 or 3 signs in his yard that were reclaimed old 1950s, 1940s era vintage signs. And there was one called the Tasty Burger, which I actually liked, and we actually seriously considered calling ourselves the Tasty Burger for a while, and I still have a little bit of remorse about it. But we ended up with a sign that was called Grove Drugs, I think. But it certainly was a vertical sign. It had room for 5 letters, and we had this theory at the time that if we named the theater something that started with an A, then we would be first in the phone book, and that was back when people actually had a phone book. So we chose the sign, and then the top of the original building, which is at 4th and Colorado, had this vaguely Alamo-related shape to it, and so that was the process for calling ourselves the Alamo Drafthouse. It's more being first in the phone book and then having a relationship to Texas, and that defined the sign, and our sign fabricator came up with that font, which we still use today.
Sometime over the summer, we started talking to different design houses in town, and eventually met the guys at Guerilla Suit and asked them what they might be able to do for us.
Alamo came to us with a full brand and identity, not really an overhaul, maybe a tightening. I don't think we realized that initially until the meeting with the first round of logos, and it was obvious from the shocked looks on their faces that we had gone into territory that they had not even thought of.
That was uncomfortable.
It was uncomfortable.
They came into the office a little while later, showing us their first pass of things that they worked on, and Tim and I were both kind of shocked by a lot of it.
I think what we wanted to do was, we felt like Alamo was a bunch of badasses, and we wanted to come in with our karate happening, and because of that, that's why we went into 70s land, and that's why we took some creative liberties, because we were excited and we wanted to show off a little bit.
I think that they came at it saying, all right, cool, brand new logo. And we saw all of those different things. And we were like, no, there's just a couple of things with our logo as it stands right now. So they took that and they kind of understood, okay, what can we do to just improve on this?
Subsequent meetings were a lot smoother because it was closer to their original intent and original flavor.
Well, and also when we presented some of the design muscle, it would then be manipulated by the CEO on Illustrator on an airplane and sent back to us, which we thought was interesting.
Yeah, Tim might be the only CEO that would, instead of giving comments on the actual logos, he would manipulate the file and then send the file back.
We realized, looking at all these different types of logos that they put together, really how happy we were with sort of the letter shapes and the things that our logo already had.
For the longest time, that was our logo. It was just the sign. We used it for the logo of the business, and then we realized at some point, maybe a couple years down the road, that every once in a while you need something horizontal, so we just kind of rejiggered the sign ourselves and made it into a rectangle.
You know, the letter forms of Alamo, we basically redrew them from the original. And those were built originally to be vertical. And so on a letter like, with an A and an M and the O, those, when they're vertical, their horizontal size is easy to maintain. But for an L, it makes the horizontal, the L, extravagantly long. And that looks fine when it's vertical, when they're placed vertical. But when they're horizontal, it doesn't quite work. So a lot of the integration of the letter forms for Alamo had to do with the L. After they were redrawn, we just had to make the L feel consistent with everything else without making some extravagant space inside of that housing.
So they did that. They gave us some packaging. We played with some of the letter shapes a little bit, specifically that L. And then finally they came back with something, and we really dug it. Hopefully you will too.
Once we figured out what Tim was trying to, how he was trying to protect Drafthouse Cinema and keep it large and prominent, then from there on out it was just muscling along.
So I think the new logo it kind of harkens back to old neon, and it definitely keeps the same font. We updated it just a little bit. So it is based on the old logo and the old sign, which was kind of a matter of happenstance, but now it's got a brand new skin. So we're real happy with it.
So that's the new logo. We really like it. Hopefully you guys too. You're going to start seeing that in our web banners, on uniforms, posters, things like that. I think it has a lot of the stuff that the classic elements of the Alamo logo, but it has this sort of structure and ability to lead us into the future. In the future, later on this year, you can expect to see some new menu designs, a new drafthouse.com website design that not only integrates the original alamo.com and drafthouse.com into one website, but should just be prettier, easier to use, easier to find tickets that you're looking for, and all sorts of other good stuff. It's going to be an exciting 2011. This logo is just the start.